Hello, everyone. Got a few dirty jokes for you today.
So after my wife died, I couldn't look at women for 20 years. But when I got out of prison, it was totally worth it. So, a guy goes to prison. As the guard is taking him to his cell, all the inmates are cat whistling at him, winking and shouting, "See you in the shower, princess." The guy is terrified and swears to himself that he'll never go for a shower. As the weeks go by, he's starting to smell real bad, but he still refuses to take a shower. Finally, after 2 months, he can't even bear his own smell no more. He decides that he's gonna brave it and have the quickest shower he possibly can to avoid any interaction with other inmates. The showers are busy, but there's no going back now. He washes all over super quickly, and the second he's about to walk out of there, a massive bloke appears from the steam and stands right in his way. He says, "Hello, princess. I've been waiting for you 2 months. You know what's gonna happen now, so I've got one question for you. Do you want it with saliva or without?" Our guy went pale, and his legs trembled underneath him. He knew he was screwed at this point, so he figured out that a bit of lubrication will be less sore. So he says, "I guess with saliva." The big bloke looks happy with the answer. He turns to his mate and shouts, "Hey, Saliva, come here! Our princess wants a threesome." So a convict escapes from prison and holes up in a convent. He rounds up all the nuns and begins to look them over, saying, "I'll have my way with all of you." A young novice says, "Please, sir, do what you will to us, but don't harm the Mother Superior." Suddenly, the Mother Superior says, "You heard the man. He said all of us." So a blonde woman goes to visit her husband in prison. Before leaving, she complains to a correction officer, "You shouldn't make my husband work so hard. He's exhausted." The officer laughs. "Miss, are you kidding? He just eats, sleeps, and stays in his cell all day." The wife frowns. "Bullshit. He told me he's been digging a tunnel for months." So, on my first night in prison, I was introduced to my cellmate. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You touch my stuff, I'll kill you. You stare at me, I'll kill you. You touch me, I'll kill you." I thought to myself, great, I've only just got here, and I'm already married. So in a prison, 2 inmates are comparing notes. "What did they arrest you for?" asks the first. "Was it a political or common crime?" The second guy replied, "Of course, it was political. I'm a plumber. They summoned me to the district party committee to fix the sewage pipes. I looked and said, 'Hey, the entire system needs to be replaced.' So they gave me 7 years. So I have a friend in prison who is very kind. Someone asked him to donate his eye. He gave it for free. Someone asked for his kidney. He also gave it for free. Another asked for his hands. He gave them both free of charge. My good friend was still willing to donate his legs as well, but the warden didn't approve it. The warden said, "That's enough. You think I didn't notice that you are trying to escape piece by piece?" So, 2 men are sitting in a prison cell. The first one says, "I'm in for 10 years for manslaughter." "What about you?" The second man shrugs. "I opened a window at work. Got 15 years. The first man stares. "What the hell?" "Yeah." The second man sighs. "The submarine captain was not happy." So some newlyweds arrive to the hotel and the girl, very afraid, tells her husband, "Honey, I don't know nothing of this. Can you help me, please?" "I will, honey," replied the husband. "Starting from this instant, we will call your thing the prison, and my thing will we call the prisoner. So we will put the prisoner in the prison." And they make love for the first time. As the guy is laying face up on the bed, the girl was delighted and tells her husband, "Love, the prisoner is outside the prison." The guy, not very delighted, tells her, "Let's put him into the prison another time." And they do it a second time. But the girl is very sweet-toothed and she tells him, "Honey, the prisoner's out again." The man rises, with the legs like a recently born foal, and they throw the third. He is laying on the bed, exhausted, and the girl says, "Honey, the prisoner escaped again." And he answers with his last breath, "Hey, it's not a life sentence." So, several years ago, Andy was sentenced to prison. During his stay, he got along well with the guards and all his fellow inmates. The warden saw that deep down, Andy was a good person and made arrangements for Andy to learn a trade while doing his time. After 3 years, Andy was recognized as one of the best carpenters in the local area. Often, he would be given a weekend pass to do odd jobs for the citizens of the community, and he always reported back to prison before Sunday night was over. The warden was thinking of remodeling his kitchen and, in fact, had done much of the work himself. But he lacked the skills to build a set of kitchen cupboards and a large countertop, which he had promised his wife. So, he called Andy into his office and asked him to complete the job for him. But, alas, Andy refused. He told the warden, "Gosh, I'd really like to help you, but counterfeiting is what got me into prison in the first place." So, 2 young guys end up in court after being arrested for smoking dope. The judge looks at them and says, "You seem like nice young men, so I'm going to give you a second chance instead of sending you to jail. This weekend, I want each of you to go out and convince people about the dangers of drug use. Come back Monday and tell me how you did." On Monday, the judge turns to the first guy. "Well, how did you do over the weekend?" "Your Honor," the first guy says proudly, "I convinced 17 people to give up drugs forever." 17 people? That's incredible. How'd you manage that?" "I used a diagram," the guy explains. "I drew 2 circles. Then I told them the big circle is your brain before drugs, and the small circle is your brain after drugs." The judge smiles. "That's admirable." He turns to the second guy. "And you? How did you do?" The second guy grins. "Your Honor, I convinced 156 people to give up drugs forever." The judge's eyes widen. 156 people? How in the world did you do that? "I used a similar diagram," the second guy says. "I also drew 2 circles. Then I pointed to the little circle and said, 'This is your asshole before prison.'" So 3 inmates were on the way to prison. They were each allowed to take 1 item with them to help them occupy their time while incarcerated. On the bus, one turned to another and said, "So, what did you bring?" The first convict pulled out a box of paints and stated that he intended to paint anything he could. He wanted to become the Grandma Moses of jail. Then he asked the second, "What did you bring?" The second convict pulled out a deck of cards and grinned and said, "I brought cards. I can play poker, solitaire, gin, and any number of games." The third convict was sitting quietly aside, grinning to himself. The other 2 took notice and asked, Why are you so smug? What did you bring? The guy pulled out a box of tampons and smiled. He said, I brought these. The other two were puzzled and asked, what can you do with those? He grinned and pointed to the box and said, well, according to the box, I can go horseback riding, swimming, roller skating. So there were 3 prisoners of war together in a British prison in the Second World War, a German, a Japanese, and an Italian. The British began by torturing the German. After long hours of silence, infected by blood-curdling screams, he talked and was sent back to the prison, ashamed. He told the others what he had done and urged them to be stronger than he was. They next began torturing the Japanese man. Through all the pain and agony, he stayed strong for 3 days, but in the end talked. He was sent back to the prison, having brought shame to himself, his family, and his country. They finally sent in the Italian. For an unending 3 weeks, they tortured him until they realized if they did anything else to the poor man, he would die. So they sent him back. When he got back to the prison cell, bloody and battered, the other prisoners asked him, so, did you talk? The Italian prisoner replied, how could I talk with my hands tied behind my back? So you've all heard of the Air Force's ultra-secret base in Nevada, known as Area 51. Well, late one afternoon, the folks out there were stunned to see a little Cessna land right on their runway. They immediately impounded the plane and dragged the pilot into an interrogation room. The pilot explained that he'd taken off from Las Vegas, gotten lost, and spotted the base just as he was about to run out of fuel. Suspicious, the Air Force called in the FBI, ran a full background check, and held him overnight. By the next morning, they were convinced he was telling the truth. So, they refueled his plane, gave him a terrifying "you did not see a base" lecture complete with threats of spending the rest of his life in prison, pointed him toward Vegas, and sent him on his way. The very next day, to their absolute disbelief, the same Cessna came flying in again. This time, military police surrounded it instantly. Only now, there were 2 people inside. The same pilot hopped out, held up his hands, and said, do whatever you want to me, but my wife is in the plane, and you have to tell her where I was last night. So a man escapes from prison where he has been for 15 years. He breaks into a house to look for money and guns and finds a young couple in bed. He orders the guy out of bed and ties him to a chair. While tying the girl to the bed, he gets on top of her, kisses her neck, then gets up and goes into the bathroom. While he's in there, the husband tells his wife, listen, this guy's an escaped convict. Look at his clothes. He probably spent lots of time in jail and hasn't seen a woman in years. I saw how he kissed your neck. If he wants to take advantage of you, don't resist, don't complain, do whatever he tells you. Satisfy him no matter how much he nauseates you. This guy is probably very dangerous. If he gets angry, he'll kill us. Be strong, honey. I love you. To which his wife responds, he wasn't kissing my neck. He was whispering in my ear. He told me he was gay, thought you were cute, and asked me if we had any Vaseline. I told him it was in the bathroom. Be strong, honey. I love you too. So Trump and Mike Pence are touring institutions across the U.S. to see how they can improve infrastructure. First, they visit a kindergarten. The roof is leaking. Toys are worn out. The playground is falling apart, and the teachers are underpaid. Trump turns to Pence. Mike, write this down. Let's donate $1 million from the federal budget to every kindergarten. Next, they visit a school. The building is crumbling. The computers are ancient, and everything is in disrepair. Trump says, "Mike, write down $2 million for every school." Finally, they visit a prison. The cells are tiny and filthy. Toilets are broken. The yard is muddy. Gangs run the place. And the smell is awful. Trump says, "Mike, write this down, $100 million for every prison. I want them perfect, inside and out, just like my hotels." Pence hesitates. "Donald, shouldn't we invest that kind of money into kindergartens and schools instead?" Trump smirks. "Mike, you really don't get it. You think after my presidency I'm going back to school?" So a guy is spending his first night in prison. He hears someone in another cell shout out, "37!" And the whole cell block bursts out laughing. Another guy shouts out 74. Same thing. 46. And everyone loses their minds. He asks his cellmate what's going on. "Why are the numbers so funny?" "Well, we've all been here so long we remember all the jokes by heart. To save time, we just give them numbers and tell those instead." "Oh, I think I understand. Let me try. 63. There's dead silence. The new guy says what's wrong. Is that one not funny? "Nah, it's a good one," replies his cellmate. "Some people just don't know how to tell a joke." So a man's son is about to return from prison. After spending 5 years in the clink, the man was very curious to know what his son plans to do further in life and what profession he's going to choose for his future. He decides to test his son. He sets a bottle of alcohol, a wad of money, a gun, and a Bible on a table in his living room. His wife notices him doing this and asks him what he plans to do with these things. The man explains by saying that this is a test to determine what our son will do in life. If he picks up the alcohol, he'll be an alcoholic. If he picks up the Bible, he'll be a priest. If he picks up the gun, he'll be a gangster. If he picks up the wad of money, he'll be a businessman. The man hides behind the curtains in the living room and waits for his son to arrive. As soon as he walks through the door, he notices the 4 things on the table. He walks up to them, takes a swig of the alcohol, pockets the wad of money, puts the gun in his back pocket, and picks up the Bible and holds it in the other hand. As soon as the son begins to walk away, the father yells, "God damn it, the boy is gonna be a politician." So Jack and Joe are in prison, in separate cells, some distance away from each other. Sad little jail cells, really, with only a solitary tiny window to peek into the outside. So they pass the time as best they can by telling each other jokes. One day, Jack asks, "Got any new jokes, Joe?" "Sorry," Joe says. "I told you every joke I know months ago. You got any more new jokes?" Jack thinks for a moment and says, "Well, I do have one more joke, but it's one of those jokes you gotta write down. It's not funny when you say it out loud. Gotta draw a picture and stuff." Joe suggests, "Why don't write it on a piece of paper and throw it over here?" Jack agrees and spends all week collecting the perfect materials, rewriting the perfect joke, drawing the perfect accommodating picture, and shaping the joke into a perfectly aerodynamic and balanced paper plan. On Friday evening, when the lights go out and the guards are changing shifts, Jack tells Joe, "Okay, here comes the joke." He tosses the paper plane. It sails across the prison hallway, slips between the prison cell bars, and glides directly towards Joe's awaiting hands. Just as Joe is about to grab the paper plane, it gets caught in an updraft. It bounces again the ceiling once and then glides out the tiny cell window. "Did you get the joke?" Jack asks. "No, sorry," Joe responds. "It went right over my head." So a train conductor ends up killing 2 people while on the job. He is found guilty and sentenced to the electric chair. When the day comes, he is asked what he would want for his last meal, and he requests a banana. After finishing his meal, he is strapped to the chair and electrocuted. However, by some miracle, he ends up surviving. Seeing as he technically served his sentence, he is released from prison, where he gets a job as a train conductor. This time, he ends up killing 3 people while on the job and is sentenced to the electric chair. The day comes, and for his last meal, he asks for 2 bananas. He finishes them and gets strapped to the chair, but he ends up surviving the electrocution again. He was released from prison for the same reason as before. He gets another job as a train conductor and ends up killing 4 people this time. He is sentenced to the electric chair again, and for his last meal, he asks for 3 bananas. He finishes his meal and gets strapped to the chair. The guards shock him for longer than necessary and use more power, but he ends up surviving again. The guards, all surprised, ask him, "How do you keep surviving every time? And why do you keep ordering bananas? Do they save you?" The man replies, "It has nothing to do with the food. I'm just a really bad conductor."